Hi everybody, welcome to Shivers. For October, we've been reviewing some really classic Halloween movies, and with The Black Phone 2 coming out this Friday, I feel like it's only right to review The Black Phone 1. So this came out in 2022, so we're 3 years removed from Black Phone 1. The creator and director is Scott Derrickson, and he's the person who created and directed Sinister. Sinister is one of my all-time favorite movies. I will recommend it to basically anybody, but already going into it, you have a little bit of a high expectation because Sinister is very scary. It is the scientific most scary movie based on heart rate. So you have Black Phone. This is also based off of a Joe Hill book, this Stephen King's son. So there's a lot of people involved in the making of the Black Phone. But we focus on this villain, we'll call him the Grabber. This is played by Ethan Hawke. He has a mask, he has black balloons, and it's all set in the 1980s. So there's a lot of this fear of like, don't get into a car with a kid with candy, don't, watch who you're walking home with, all of those different types of things. So in order to review this movie, we'll save the actual rating at the end. Here we'll get into the story if you haven't seen it yet. However, Black Phone 2, like I said, comes out this Friday. So this is going to be a good kind of catch up before you go see that movie. So for the Black Phone 1, this does have an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. As I said, it focuses on the Grabber, but it does also have a lot of elements of supernatural in it. So not only are we focusing more on like the missing kids and things like that, we're also focusing on paranoia, mental illness, and how that crosses over into the supernatural. So Finn and Gwen are the two kids that are our main characters. And Gwen has all of these dreams that keep coming true. So she keeps dreaming about things that are happening with the Grabber, and all of these kids are going missing in their town. We also have Max, who is someone that we meet a little bit later. This is the brother of the Grabber, who has no idea what's actually going on. So it does lean into that idea of every serial killer is somebody's next door neighbor type of thing. So as we have Gwen and Finn kind of going about their regular school life, they're just in middle school, high school, all of these stories are going on about the Grabber of make sure you're not walking home by yourself, make sure you're not following some weird man with black balloons into his van. So Finn and Gwen, as they have all of these sort of under the surface supernatural abilities, they're starting to pick up on all these things that are sort of happening in town. Their mother also committed suicide, and the father keeps saying it was all the voices in her head. So he's worried about Gwen and Finn, that the supernatural element is kind of going to get them, and therefore he's starting to like kind of beat them, treat them terribly, all for the sake of I want to keep you safe. So it's that twisted mentality and really that old school parenting from like the 80s. So as they have this horrible home life, they're not really treated the best at school. All of these things are going on in the background of these kids that are missing. But then you have Finn, who is trying to stand up for himself, trying to stand up for his friends, and just kind of keeps getting knocked down. So both of them have hearts of gold. One day, Finn is walking by himself. Gwen says she's going to go stay over her friend's house, and the Grabber is there with eggs. He drops his eggs, and Finn, just having that heart of gold, walks over, tries to help him, and then he gets taken. So here's where we spend pretty much the rest of the movie, is focusing on what has happened to him and where have all of these kids been taken by the Grabber, and they're all in this room with just a bed and a phone. So that whole point of it being called Black Phone is there's a black phone in the room. Gwen is now starting to have more dreams about all of these kids, including Finn, and she's trying to help the police department figure out where they are, all while her father doesn't believe any of this and wants to keep her quiet. And she's actually the one who's being very helpful. So as Finn is down there, he's been right on the edge of logic and the supernatural, and he knows that he has all this intuition, but he doesn't want to lean into it because of everything that happened with his mother. So he hears the phone ring. It's not attached to anything, and thus convinces really the rest of the story of this phone is ringing from all of these ghost children that have been in the Grabber's area before, all telling Finn what succeeded for them in trying to escape and what did not. also what the schedule of the grabber is and what might change. So it becomes this survival story from Finn's perspective of, okay, now I'm going to be able to set all these traps and follow these kids and basically let these ghosts help me get out. So upstairs is again that idea of every serial killer is somebody's next door neighbor, is Max, who is really enthralled in this grabber case, and he's like, yo bro, you gotta look at what's going on in the news, and he's telling the grabber himself what's actually going on. So after all of this sequence of events of very smallly chipping away at being able to escape, Gwen is helping the police, everything else is going okay. Very long story short, Finn then is able to actually trap the grabber using all of these tricks that these kids have told him along the way. Gwen is able to find the bodies of the kids as they're in a house that's right across the street. And that way, literally, as soon as the cops come out of the house with all of the children's bodies, Finn is running out the front door and they're able to meet in the middle of the street and everything is okay. So she's proven as being correct. The father is devastated that he's been terrorizing his own children all of this time. The grabber is now dead in the basement, and the brother is now mind blown that his brother did this. So that is where Black Phone 1 leaves off. There's not a whole lot left to talk about in terms of the original story. So the Black Phone 2 is its own written spin-off, but it's this idea of Finn and Gwen getting a little bit older. She's starting to have dreams again of all of these kids in sort of the same way of the grabber fashion, but we know the grabber is dead. So there's even more of a supernatural element to this one. We do get to see this movie early, so I'm very grateful for all these early movies. It's really cool. So that review for Black Phone 2 will come out on Friday. But in terms of the rating for Black Phone 1, I did not have very high expectations other than the fact that I knew it was created by Scott Derrickson and Joe Hill. But for this movie in general, because I love Sinister so much, it has that sinister vibe. It has the Polaroid vibe to it, and I think that it's done super well. So for the actual ratings for Black Phone, the story itself gets a 5 out of 5. This is something that is really unique. This to me is the perfect cross between logic and supernatural. The actual believability of, I'm having all of these dreams, it's not a coincidence, like please somebody just listen to me. The other side of that is originality. So originality gets a 5 out of 5 for pretty much the same reason. It's the idea that we're talking about all of these things that actually happened in the 80s and all of these people who were kidnapped and the warnings of not getting in vans with candy and balloons and all of this stuff. But you do have these children who have gifts and it's just suppressed until it helps sort of save their life. For acting, I would give it a 4 out of 5. I think everybody really did their job. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not the biggest fan of kids in horror movies. That is the whole literal point of this movie, is that it's all about kidnapping kids. So I think that they all did their job. I would give it a 5 out of 5 if it was slightly different, but it's not a complaint. For acting, acting was a 4. Production, I will give it a 4 out of 5. Just for the simple fact that we're pretty much spending the entire movie in the basement outside of just walking around town. So I would have liked to see a little bit more like rooms or scenery or something like that. That's not the point of the movie, but just for the sake of production value, just mixing it up a little bit, I would have loved. And then for scares, I'll give this a 4 out of 5. This is a scary movie. This is relatively gory, but it is the whole premise of not only the real life scare, but then also the grabber himself and what he looks like and the slight gore when he starts to get hurt. So you have a solid scary movie on your hands with this one. So all in all, that gives this a 4.3 out of 5. I do love A Black Phone. I recommend it all the time. I think it's really great. It's an easy read book too, so I have really high expectations for Black Phone 2. I'm not sure what direction they're going to really take it, but I'm excited to see it. So like I said, that review will be out on Friday, but let me know what you think of The Black Phone and this whole almost new genre of horror. We're seeing a lot more focus on realism into supernatural, into the intuition, which I think is a cool threshold to cross. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll see you on Friday.